Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community, is brought to you by Handi Quilter, designed by a quilter for quilters. Sulky, express yourself with sulky and create with confidence. Brother, it's so easy with Brother at your side. And Quilt Cut, easy fabric cutting for quilters. Hi, and welcome to Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community. I'm Mary Kate Carpetras, and with me today is Luana Rubin, the co-owner and president of eQuilter.com, which is an online fabric retailer. Welcome, Luana. Thanks for coming out today.
Thanks for inviting me.
And thank you for bringing such gorgeous set decoration for us today.
Yes.
The fabrics that you see draped around our set today were brought by Luana after a very recent trip to India. Is that right?
Right.
And what was the purpose of your trip to India?
It was really a color and design inspiration trip. I went with two other photographers, quilter Pam Holland and her sister, and we wanted to just take in the lush visual feast that is India. And
you brought back a lot of textiles, and there's so many more off camera. They're just gorgeous. But while you were there, you went with a purpose in addition to the color and design aspect. And one of the things that eQuilter is known for, I think, among quilters, is your dedication to charitable outreach and helping on a global scale. And you said when you were there, you went not with a specific goal, not a specific target in mind, but a goal. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. Well, I'm sure you know there's so much poverty in India. It's very easy to find a way to help in India. So we were looking for just the right opportunity. And really, our first 2 days in Delhi, our guide told us that his wife was a teacher at a school for street children. And these were children who, if you see them in the school, you know, they're all wearing the same little blue and white uniform, and their hair is combed, but they live perhaps in a slum under a plastic tarp, something like that. It's really quite shocking. And this was an organization that would go in and find those children, find those families, and invite them to come and be a part of the school. But of course, they always need help. So we decided
they have to buy uniforms, which sometimes that keeps children out of school.
Right, in the public school. Yeah, in the public school in many countries, the public school may be free, but if they have to buy their uniform for a really poor family, that would exclude them from even public school. And in this case, this organization bought them everything, the uniforms, the supplies, and everything. So what we did was we got them a projector and a screen.
Such a simple thing, but it will make a real difference to their education.
Right.
And this is not a one-off, you know, charitable contribution for you. Again, as we said, eQuilter is known for that, and this seems to be something that's really close to your heart. This desire to help on, you know, wherever you can, and it's something that's been a part of your life since you were a young woman. Is that correct? And you started traveling when you were quite young.
Yeah, I had a job overseas in Hong Kong when I was 22. I lived there for 3 years. And one of the freelance jobs that I had was going to a factory that was out kind of in the countryside. I had to take a subway there, and the subway station came out in the middle of a slum. And every week I would go to that factory, and I would come out, and I would walk through the open sewers and the cardboard boxes and the naked children and just, you know, experience what that was all about. It was kind of shocking. I was 22, and I had never really seen anything like that up close. And I would talk to the kids and bring them toys and, you know, food and candy and things like that. And one week, one of the kids who I always spoke to was gone, and I asked about him, and they said, well, he died. And I thought, well, gosh, of course, you know, some of these people have to die over a period of time when I'm visiting because the conditions are so appalling. And that was really an awakening for me, where poverty and the things that go on in developing countries are not something that's just a picture or, you know, something you see on TV. I mean, these are real people with lives and loves and feelings just as us.
Then you had a career. You worked in the fashion industry. Is that correct? And in 1999, you founded eQuilter.com here in Colorado. And tell us how the charitable aspect of your business came to be.
Well, we started in the basement of our home, and we moved into a warehouse, a 4,000 square foot warehouse, a few months later. And at the end of that year, towards the end of that year, we started this, I had this idea that what could we do if we gave a percentage, not of profits, but of sales, where we make a commitment that no matter what, every month, we will take that percentage and write checks. And we chose a list of, I think at the beginning it was 5 charities, now it's 7 charities. where the customer can choose which charity appeals to them. And then every month, when we send out those checks, we send an email to everybody who placed an order saying, okay, we're sending that money out to the charity of your choice. Here's how much we raised for that particular charity.
And so the customer gets to choose what charity receives 2% of her,
Exactly.
presumably her, but
Yes.
maybe his, purchase price. Again, not the profits, but the net sales,
So
the gross sales.
And it ranges from a variety of charity recipients, from breast cancer research, which is of course very popular with quilters, but
Yes.
also Chinese orphans, Mission of Love, which helps to build hospitals and clinics and hospices and helping out children around the world. Mission of Love is somebody who we've worked with for many years. We're also working with Engineers Without Borders. One of the more popular ones is Doctors Without Borders. We're working with the NASA chapter of Engineers Without Borders with an orphanage in Rwanda in Africa. And we also work with environmental groups such as Rainforest Action Network and Ocean Conservancy are the two current ones that we're working with.
And you have this heart for international outreach, but also definitely for domestic and U.S.-based outreach as well. And tell us how 9/11 affected the type of work that you do with quilters.
That was the first time that occurred to us that we could tap into the resource of quilters who wanted to do something. I mean, everybody on 9/11 felt like, we all felt so helpless, you know, what can we do? And we put out a call for quilts. We got 3,500 quilts that were donated. And we made a promise to them that we would have those quilts personally put into the hands of those in need, those who had been affected directly. And that's a very important thing because, you know, you can donate a quilt and you always wonder who's going to get it. And you may not get a thank you back from the person who receives it if they're really devastated. But if you put your name on the back and maybe a message of comfort and love, believe me, that person who receives it is going to feel that the love and the message that is placed on the back of the quilt on a label.
So 9/11 was the first time eQuilter helped spearhead that, but unfortunately there have been many occurrences, natural disasters as well as man-made disasters or tragedies since then that you've also stepped in, and all the way up to the recent Colorado flooding that we've had, right, literally in your backyard.
In our backyard, right. And that was pretty shocking, that suddenly we had people who had sent us quilts for the Japanese tsunamis now were saying, gosh, what can we do to help your neighbors who have lost their homes, who have lost, I have a friend who's an artist who lost her home, her studio, and all of her artwork in Lyons. And last year and the year before, we've helped out with people who lost their homes in the fires here in Colorado. But we've also worked abroad. We've given quilts to Haiti after the earthquake. We have distributed quilts, obviously, in Japan. There were 2,500 quilts that were distributed there. And also, I went to Guatemala on a cleft lip and cleft palate surgery trip, and we gave quilts to all the children, all the families who came for that surgery.
And so you've been literally on the ground helping to hand out these quilts in many instances.
Yes.
And seeing the people.
So gratifying. I mean, you know, when we went out to a village in Tecpan, Guatemala, we went to an orphanage, and there were 17 children who didn't have any relatives at all to go home to over the holidays. I went there the beginning of December, and these kids were just there with nobody. And we brought quilts for each of those children, and we kind of made a ceremony out of it. We wrapped them in the quilt, we gave them a hug, and told them how special and wonderful they were. And the photos that we got out of there, I mean, every time I see them, it touches my heart.
You've also worked with people in Oklahoma. You were just there earlier this year. What can you tell us about that?
Well, after the giant tornado, and I think we all watched in horror, you know, the results of that tornado. Mission of Love is one of the groups that I work with, and I work really closely with them. That's who we worked with for the Japanese tsunami quilts and also the Guatemala trip. And what we did was we told people you can either drop off a quilt at eQuilter or you can ship it to Mission of Love in Ohio, because they're going to have a big truck full of quilts. And so we went down there with, in this case, several hundred quilts, because we only gave them a few weeks to send us the quilts. You know, for a larger project, they may have months to send the quilt. But we went down with several hundred quilts, and we went to the town hall, and we met with the mayor. And there was a quilt shop right across the street, and we had, I think, 400 quilts, and they brought another 100 quilts and several pillowcases, and they put it out on social media, and people showed up all day long. and we personally handed out every single one of those. And E.E. Schenck also donated a tote bag. And when you think about people who've lost everything, you know, they don't have a bag to put anything in. So we gave them quilts, pillowcases, and tote bagged. And boy, there were people who said, well, you know, I didn't lose my whole house. I only had half of my house destroyed. And, you know, eventually we might be able to move back. And they'd say, I'm not sure if I should take this. And we'd say, no, you deserve to take this quilt.
Yes.
And they would just, you know, fall into our arms and dissolve into tears. Thank you so much. Who are these strangers who would send us these handmade quilts, these beautiful quilts? And, you know, coming back to the India connection, I remember there was an Indian family, and there was one quilt that had elephants and other Indian motifs, and when they came in, I could just tell they were just in shell shock. And I said, I have a quilt for you, and I pulled that one out, and their eyes brightened. They were like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And so every quilter who made a special quilt, some person who came in chose that quilt because it spoke to them, and there was a healing that went on every single time that a quilt was chosen, and that's really beautiful to experience.
And you also worked with Hurricane Katrina?
We did.
Relief, and not necessarily in New Orleans, is that correct?
We worked with a town called Jean Lafitte, which is a little fishing village, and to date, because I met the mayor, he came to Moore and met us for this last trip. To date, they still have had no FEMA and no Red Cross aid come to their little community. So a lot of those little communities just got wiped out and nobody ever came to help them. And so we not only, we sent, Mission of Love sent a truck down full of supplies right immediately after the event, but also we came back and we rebuilt several of the houses.
So your involvement has surpassed just, here's a quilt, you know, buy. You've gone back. There's been ongoing support for this community.
Right, and that's thanks to Kathy Price, who's the director of Mission of Love. She's an amazing woman. I mean, people they're amazed by what we do, but really the people who are on the ground doing this month after month after month. Mission of Love is the largest user of the Denton program. This is a government program that uses empty military cargo planes to take disaster relief supplies overseas. So she's the largest single user of that program.
Okay.
And she also is working right here in the U.S. in Pine Ridge in South Dakota, and has rebuilt an orphanage that burnt down, built a hospice because there were people who were just dying on their dirt floors of their little huts. So I have to give them a lot of credit.
So working in places that maybe aren't getting the headlines,
Exactly.
but where there still is a great need that exists.
Yes, and helping the indigenous people who don't have access to resources, sometimes like the mainstream community would. So for instance, in Guatemala, helping out the Mayan people.
These are great stories, and eQuilter customers have really helped, well, the aggregate of all the money that they have helped donate helped you reach a milestone recently. And tell us about that.
Yeah, well, last year in July of 2012, we reached a $1 million mark of total raised for charity, which I remember when we hit the $500,000 mark, that was a big deal for us. And I thought, wow, I wonder if we'll ever hit the $1 million mark. And we did. We're now at 1.1 something because, of course, we continue. But the other thing that's important is that all the quilts that have been sent, and I have to give credit to all those quilters who have donated quilts. Of course, they don't know who it's going to go to. They just selflessly, there are some guilds that are just always making quilts, and whenever there's a disaster, they've got a group of quilts that they're going to send out. So I know quite a while ago we surpassed the 10,000 quilt mark. Now I think it's kind of hard to keep track. We've had so many disasters lately. But I believe we're at about 14,000 quilts that we have distributed that have been donated by our friends and customers, which that is amazing to me.
It's a testament to just quilters just wanting to share, wanting to, you know, share that love that we associate with making a quilt for somebody, and get it out there, even if, as you said, they're never going to meet the person, but it really does make a difference. And because you've been on the ground, because you've been in communities where you had the opportunity to hand out quilts or bring some of these programs or see the programs in action, you can really bear witness to the fact that every little bit makes a difference.
Oh yes, I mean when you're face to face with someone receiving the aid or the quilts, it's obvious. I mean, for that one person, you may not be able to help everybody, but when you're helping that one person, it's everything to them.
Well, that is a great place to end. Just sums up the work that you've been doing perfectly, I think. And we really thank you. We thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And we thank you for joining us today. Take care. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community, is brought to you by Handi Quilter, designed by a quilter for quilters. Sulky, express yourself with Sulky and create with confidence. Brother, it's so easy with Brother at your side. And Quilt Cut, easy fabric cutting for quilters.